Hello everybody, come join me while I make this No Face cosplay. I approached it like origami and started out with a square base. This is how it looks when you open the flaps up. Next, I open one side of the flaps and cut down the middle to create an armhole, and just repeat it on the other side. And then I sewed the flaps from the front to the back on both sides to finish the sleeve. I lined the armholes with some ribbon so I can see them easier when I'm inside the cosplay. And that concludes the sewing. Let's move on to the paper mache mask. Several types of glue, a balloon base, and strips of commercial paper that had accumulated in my mailbox. This weekend, my boyfriend, a couple of our friends, and I are going to take about a 7-hour road trip to National Harbor, Maryland, so we can attend Katsucon, a giant anime convention. Our brilliant idea was to have my boyfriend and I cosplay as No Face and Chihiro from Spirited Away. Guess who's going to cosplay No Face, and guess which one of us is going to cosplay Chihiro. We are also going to be cosplaying as delivery Moogles. And I already made these Moogle cosplays a while ago for a different convention, but I do still have to do a little bit of touch-ups on it. So if you're interested in me making a video on making touch-ups on the cosplays, just let me know down in the comments. So at the time of this clip, I've already completed the first layer of paper mache. And after that layer dried, I proceeded to put on a second layer. I used some shorter strips of paper to fit the curve of the mask, and then used longer strips to cover the rest of the surface. And this is the completed sticky, wet, goopy third layer. I'm gonna detach the mask from the balloon and see what the shape looks like. I'm doing it now just to be able to shape it since it's still thin. I'm going to be honest, I had a little bit of trouble shaping the mask and cutting the features out because I kept forgetting which side was up and which side was down. So next time I make the mask, I'm probably going to try to make it a little narrower and maybe make it a little thicker by adding another couple layers of paper mache. I had actually meant to try to do some reshaping and additional layers when I popped the mask off the balloon, but I got a little impatient and it looked great when I took it off, so I left it as it was, and now I'm regretting it. I added some glue and paper over the areas I cut, that way it didn't look or feel super sharp. It was kind of tricky and quite messy to get the edges smoothed down, but I think it was worth it in the end. It looked pretty good. I'm adding another layer of paint, and actually I added another layer of glue on top of it too, just to make it feel a little bit more stiff. Almost forgot to make the mouth, but after I cut it out, I just repeated the previous process of moving the paper and smoothing down the edges. On a side note, in several scenes of Spirited Away, No Face does have hands, legs, and feet, so I do have a pair of gloves, leggings, and boots to go with the cosplay. Once all the layers of paint and glue dried, I proceeded to paint the markings on the face. I actually didn't have purple paint at the time, so I was rather proud of the shade that I managed to mix up. So post Katsucon and in editing mode, I'd like to look back and say that despite the time crunch I was in, I'm pretty happy with how the cosplays turned out. Time crunch, of course, was self-inflicted due to this chronic illness called procrastination. They did come out a little bit wonky, but I attribute that more so to lack of experience. I'm looking forward to getting more experience to working on bigger and more complicated projects. So stay tuned if you're interested. I traced the shape of the mask onto the fabric, then cut the shape out in sections. Once the mask was dry and ready, I glued the sections to the inside. I got this construction mask, and the intention was to give the head a rounder shape and to provide a base for the mask to sit on. I attached it using duct tape, as you can see, and since the mask was sitting on the hat, it gave a lot more space between the mask and my face so I could talk and breathe and see a little bit better. I plan to stuff a bit of aluminum foil to the top to give it a better shape. What's nice is you can adjust the straps on the hat, that way it fits your head a little better. And that was No Face completed, so we're moving on to the Chihiro cosplay now. So starting off, I got this 3XL t-shirt from Joann's and I just sliced the top of it off. Next, I measured the length of some elastic to a pair of pants my boyfriend already owns. Then I folded the cut part of the t-shirt down to the size of the width of the elastic and pinned it down so I can make a channel for the elastic to go through. After sewing, I used some safety pins to help me pull the elastic through the channel. And I sewed the ends of the elastic together in a kind of square shape to make it more secure. And that completes the waistband portion of the pants. Using my boyfriend's shorts again, I measured up to the crotch line. I cut up to that measurement and sewed on either side to create the legs. Wow, these legs were made for walking. For the leg sleeves, I just repeated all the steps I took for the waistband. But this time I measured the length of the elastic to the circumference of my boyfriend's calf. So I folded the fabric over, pinned it, sewed it, and then using safety pins I pulled the elastic through the channel and sewed the ends shut. And for the last part, I sewed the opening of the channel closed, but on a side note, I left the opening on the channel to the waistband, that way I can thread a drawstring through it so that you can tighten it when they're on. That's the square I talked about sewing to secure the ends of elastic together. The slits on the side of Chihiro's pants, I tried to make them pockets, but the opening was too big and they kept falling out. So I cut the sleeves shorter, sewed it up, and just tucked them in. Now working on the shirt half, I cut a slit on both shoulders and up both sides. And then I just hemmed all the raw edges. Alright, time to learn how to dye. The fabric, I mean. The recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of dish detergent and 1 cup of either salt or vinegar depending on what your fabric is. I only had fancy coarse Himalayan salt, so I opted for vinegar instead and just hoped for the best. I just eyeballed a teaspoon of dish detergent. I decided to mix these 2 dye colors, partly because the store only had 1 of each color left, and partly because neither color was really what I was looking for. Teamwork makes the dream work. I think the water cooled down enough, but I just added some cold water just in case. Alright, here we go, shirt first. And then the pants. I tied the pocket part off and left it out because it's supposed to stay white. Fingers crossed that it doesn't turn out weird. BF is working on painting these shoes yellow. I left the clothes in the dye for about an hour and kept pouring hot water in to keep the temperature up and move the fabric around to distribute the dye better. To be honest, I don't really like how the top came out. I had my BF wear the white shirt so it would peek through the slits. Although I hemmed the raw edges of the slits, they kept curling over and the thread I didn't realize wouldn't dye with the rest of the fabric. And I just felt like the whole shirt in general just looked really messy. The pants in comparison were much better. I liked how the elastic waistband and the leg sleeves turned out. Although the dye job could use some more work, it was really patchy in a lot of areas. I'm glad I rewatched Spirited Away because in like a 2-second scene, Chihiro shows you how to tie that white ribbon that's on her back, and I almost forgot the special purple hair tie. So I'm kind of bad and I forgot to collect business cards for every single thing I got from Artist Alley, but I spent about 30 minutes trying to figure out if this business card went to this cute little bucket hat. When I looked on their social media, it said what booth they were at, and I remember that was the booth we were at in person. I can't find a business card that goes to this one, but they're pretty darn cute. I've learned my lesson. Next time I will ask for business cards whenever I buy something from the Artist Alley booth. the shopkeeper gave me a free Okayu sticker. This one I find myself getting from their booth almost every time I see them. This, oh my gosh, I fell in love with this shop. I wanted to buy everything there. I'm gonna be cutting that sticker out and keeping it. It's just so adorable.